Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to everyone. Today, we are honored to have you all here with us this evening to celebrate intellectual discourse and the enduring legacy of Dr. Chatterjee. To set the context for this evening and to share a few words about the Indo-British Scholars Association and today's debate, I would invite Ms. Ritashri Ghosh, President IPSA, to address the gathering.
Thank you, Natasha. A very good evening and a warm welcome to each one of you. Thank you for being with us on this special, very special evening as we fondly remember our Dr. Sandip Chatterjee. He was past president of IPSA, which is the Indo-British Scholars Association, and also co-founder of CDC, the Calcutta Debating Circle. Many of you knew him personally, and each one of the speakers actually had and have also a close and a unique connect with him. So that's what makes it so special today. Apart from being a brilliant neurosurgeon, Sandip Da was truly a man of all seasons, multifaceted, as you saw in the video which was here, which was shown a few minutes ago. Multifaceted, his keen sense of humor, the twinkle in his eyes. He was a passionate photographer. He also wrote poetry. And above all, he was a legendary debater. So what better way than to remember his legacy? So my connection with Sandip Da goes back, actually way back, but it was about 7 years ago that he invited me to get more actively involved with IPSA and to help him with programs for IPSA. And that's how we started working together. It was COVID times. We curated some fabulous programs, some very interesting programs. But out of all of them, the one which stood out and was our personal favorite was when Sandip Da was in conversation with Ajit and Diya Bajaj, and they were the first Indian father-daughter duo to climb Mount Everest. And all of you who know Sandip Da, knew Sandip Da and his love for the mountains, he was super excited, and it was a fabulous session. And it's still up on YouTube. If you ever want to see that session, it really, truly was a very, very interesting one. So this evening, we are going to be handing over to the speakers soon, but I also wanted to share that the conversation on this memorial and annual debate actually began, the idea germinated during a conversation with Mr. Sanjay Budhia and CDC and IPSA. And that was how this kind of, evolved. And we also have with us, and we're delighted to have with us, the family of Sandip Da, Dr. Uttara Chatterjee, Shombit, Aishmita, Shudipta, Mitaliti. So thank you all for being with us today. So with that, back to you, Natasha.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving forward, it is our privilege today that Caring Minds International extended their support to this program. And today I would like to call upon Ms. Sugandha Ramkumar, who will be providing an overview of the impactful work undertaken by Caring Minds International. Ma'am.
Good evening and namaste. I'm here today on behalf of the Budhia family. Dr. Meenu Budhia is unable to be with us today as she has fallen sick suddenly. Despite her earnest wish and her willingness to be here, unfortunately, she could not make it. There is one face that the Budhia family misses clearly whether at the Bengal Club, at the debates of the Calcutta Club, or at their home get-togethers. That is the soft-spoken, ever-smiling Dr. Sandip Chatterjee. His wonderful sense of humor, his wit, his wisdom, and above all, his warmth will be deeply missed by everyone who has had the privilege of knowing him, wherever and whenever they have met him. The Budhia family fondly remembers one particular joke which they enjoyed every time they hosted a get-together. Dr. Chatterjee would say, Sanjay, I got an invitation from both Meenu and you, and for another day from Priyam. I shall come for both. So perhaps only the busiest person could say something like this. It is therefore with a great warmth and affection that we remember him today. As a humble tribute to his memory, Mr. Sanjay Budhia initiated this annual memorial debate in his honor. And we are all truly happy and privileged to be associated with it. Mr. Sanjay Budhia has to leave for the United States and is at this very moment on his way to the airport. His travel had been planned earlier, and so he could not be here with us today. He conveys his deepest respect and regards to the memory of Dr. Sandip Chatterjee. He also conveys his warmest respect and regards to Uttaradi, the lady behind the man, and to all of you present here today. On behalf of the Budhia family, I extend my heartfelt respects to Dr. Sandip Chatterjee and my warmest greetings to everyone gathered here. And as for the work that we do in Caring Minds, there will be a small video that will be shown to you, which you can see and you can understand what we do there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, Caring Minds International, for the lovely work and the social work that they're doing in the society. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Shankar Ramalingam, Trustee, Calcutta Debating Circle, to address the House and share what the Calcutta Debating Circle does and our activities that we have all around the year. Sir, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. It's sometimes very easy to introduce CDC to an audience which already knows about CDC. But there are a lot of young students, a lot of newcomers to this evening. So let me tell you a few good words about CDC and what it plans to do during the year and in the coming months. Our founders are also today's they will be the co-chairpersons in today's debate, Dr. Sarkar and Pradeep Guptu, and one of our founders, unfortunately, passed away, Dr. Sandip Chatterjee, in whose memoriam we are having this debate today. The CDC, as today morning me and Pradeep Guptu was calculating, we have done over 100 debates in 13 years of our existence, both in India, outside India, and many of our members have also taken part in several international debates. At CDC, we try to get the best thinkers, the best journalists, I may use the word best politicians also at times, and also the promising students to our platform. Today you will see such a student who is only 18 years old and passed class 12 just 2 months ago. He'll be here today speaking. We try always at all public debates that we carry an argument through and we go home and have a nice dinner without further arguments. CDC believes in good debating, conviction, and successfully conclude an argument. That's what we will have today. This October, we are taking, during the Puja holidays, 4 youngsters to UK for debating at Eton and Harrow. This is again giving encouragement to youthful debaters. And I would say that I have to thank the sponsors this evening. We are extremely touched by the movie shown by Caring Minds International and Asclepios Health Services and Mega Seafoods. Some of the new persons I met this evening, they said, how do we join CDC? How long does it take to get membership? Well, you go to our website, everything is available, but I can tell you it's definitely shorter time than the Delhi Gymkhana and the Tolly Club. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. This evening is a tribute to a remarkable debater and an extraordinary individual. Beyond his own brilliance, Dr. Sandip Chatterjee was a steadfast supporter and a dedicated mentor to countless student debaters. He believed deeply in the power of the youth and was always there to encourage young minds to find their own unique voice. To acknowledge and celebrate his life and enduring memory, we now share this short video tribute.
Calcutta Debating Circle was born out of the efforts of a heart surgeon without a brain surgeon without a heart, and a journalist with neither. This was one of Sandip's favorite quotes at the beginning of every such gathering. Besides being an extraordinarily talented doctor, a surgeon, and a scholar, Sandip was also a passionate debater, somebody who debated with the highest in the land and with equal compassion and respect with the youngest student in any school or college of Kolkata. He would listen to the person, listen to the speech, pick up the issues and reason. Because after all, we debate to achieve change, to help you make up your mind, to help you change your mind. I can only crave your indulgence for a few more minutes to listen to Sandip's last recording made for us when the team was visiting from Harvard and Yale and Oxford and London School of Economics and Cambridge University as part of our international training program. We have many such programs lined up, and I think he would have been very happy to know that Calcutta Debating Circle now runs regular training classes where young students come to hone their debating skills. We remember him fondly on this day, and we thank you for coming here. Thank you.
On behalf of the Calcutta Debating Circle, as one of its founder trustees, I have been asked to speak to you about debating. Well, debating is the science of analysis combined with the art of expression. We know that debates existed in the time of Plato and Aristotle in ancient Greece. In this country, the longest debate, the longest answer to a simple vexing question is contained in our own Bhagavad Gita, where Hamlet would have addressed the question as, to fight or not to fight, that is the question. Debate is about logical thoughts, interlaced and punctuated with thoughtful illustrations. Hence, you have to question the answers as well as answer the questions. For if you have to prove the grass is greener on your side, then you either have to prove that the color of the grass is truly green on your side, or at least that it is brown on the other side. Yet, amidst all these discords and disagreements, we debaters follow a protocol of politeness. Hence, debating is about making a point without making an enemy. It is about trampling arguments without treading on people's toes. We used to say before that we follow the parliamentary style of debating. We now tell our parliamentarians to follow our debating principles. Because debating is not only about listening, it is about hearing. And believe me, from a professor of neurosurgery, that for hearing you require your brain. For listening, the ears are enough. But remember, I always say that debating is about verbal violence without physical rage. It is about dissecting arguments without resecting the arguer. It's about assailing the message without assaulting the messenger. Remember, in debating, you are speaking to influence rather than influencing to speak. Indeed, in a democracy, debating is the main freedom of reasoning. Though here in the world's largest democracy, to the two traditional types of reasoning, which is deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, we have added a new dimension, which we call political reasoning. But hopefully, you will steer clear of that type of reasoning in the debates that ensue. So the Calcutta Debating Circle welcomes, teaches, and encourages complete freedom of speech, combined with a controlled rule of expression within an allocated time frame decided by the man or woman with the bell to finish making your point. That is what debating is all about.
In this very spirit, and to honor a legacy that continues to inspire debaters across generations, we now move on to a very special segment of this evening, the presentation of the citation for excellence in debating. We have chosen 3 students who have participated in debates across Calcutta and have shown excellence in every format. May I request Dr. Uttara Chatterjee to please come forward on the stage. I'll also invite Dr. Kapoor, Mr. Raju Raman, Ms. Swati Gautam, and Ms. Rishashi Ghosh to please come up on the stage and give away the citation. May I please request Obhishikta Ghosh of the BSS school to please come up on the stage. Can we have a huge round of applause for her? Thank you. May I please request Debayon Pathok of St. Xavier's Collegiate School to please come up on the stage. Thank you, Debayon. May I please request Nirbhay Raj of La Martiniere for Boys to please come up on the stage to receive the citation for excellence in debating. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee and others. Now, for the most awaited part of the evening, I'll call the side proposition first, and in no particular order, Devdipto Roy, the youngest and hopefully not so soon to be an immigrant. He is an alumnus of St. Xavier's Collegiate School, and alongside being a student of life sciences, he is also a Hindustani classical vocalist. Yes. Thank you, Devdipto. Dr. Kaushik Ghosh, I like to believe that he is a part-time orthopedic surgeon, given the number of movies that he stars in, and the photography exhibitions, and the poetry. Madam Supriya Newar, a writer, independent consultant, trained vocalist, and she is the author of 2 books, Kolkata Classic and Justaju. And retired Justice Shubroto Talukdar, an alumnus of Presidency College, Jadavpur University, and Delhi University. He worked as a journalist for prominent national dailies before entering the legal practice in 1989. For side opposition, we have Professor Krishna Sen. I don't think she needs an introduction, given the number of students who Professor Shumantran Bose, a political scientist and executive director of the Netaji Research Bureau, formerly a professor at the London School of Economics. He is globally recognized expert on regional conflicts and democracy with 8 published books. Ms. Moyuri Mukherjee, a doctoral student in anthropology in New York University, focusing on medical innovation and genetic data security. It's quite interesting how she went from sociology to anthropology and now medical innovation and genetic insecurity. And Abhrajit Mitra sir, a senior advocate at the Calcutta High Court, specializing in business and commercial law. He holds a degree from the University of London and LSE and is a past president of IBSA. Now, without whom the debate wouldn't officially start, I would like to call upon the co-chairpersons for today's evening, Dr. Kunal Sarkar and Pradeep Guptu. Over to the moderators.
Natasha, thank you very much. Before we start the debate, it's extremely important to remember Sandip Chatterjee lives on. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a feeling that somewhere Sandip had something to do with the structuring of this debate. In his own way, with his own sense of subtle sarcasm. This evening, the House debates that Indians work best as immigrants. And this debate is happening in front of a House, a good part of which either did not understand or chose to ignore the allurement of life overseas. And this debate is happening with 4 people speaking against the motion who has a lot to do in their present and past experiences, in experiences overseas, and 4 people who are firmly entrenched in their life, living and careers out here in the country who will be supporting the motion. So if this is not the irony of debating, then what is? I'm sure it'll be a wonderful debate this evening. I'll just spell out the rules very simply to you. Each one of them will have 8 minutes to speak on. At the end of the 7th minute, we'll give them a gentle but shrill reminder. At the end of the 8th minute, the noise will become so obnoxious that they'll find it virtually impossible to speak. And after they have completed their rounds, each one of them will get 2 minutes of rebuttal time, and after that, it is all you who will be voicing your opinion and your vote on the debate. With that note, Pradeep, you take over.
Thank you, Kunal. The reason we chose this motion was very simple. We think immigrants are very important. Had Homo sapiens not turned immigrant from the subcontinent of Africa, we wouldn't be here, neither you nor me nor anybody else. That's how important. Whether they were successful or not is what we are going to debate here today. And to open the argument this evening, Justice Subrato Talukdar, the first speaker and the leader of the proposition. Justice Talukdar, can we ask our timekeeper to wave his hand so that we know where he's seated? Let's start.
Thank you, moderators. Thanks to the Calcutta Debating Circle for inviting me to speak in this debate. This is the first time that I have this opportunity to speak at a debate organized by the CDC, and I start my defense of the proposition bowing to the memory of Dr. Sandip Chatterjee, about whom we learnt just now. Now, the motion is, as we have all know, that Indians work best as immigrants. Now, during my morning walks in the gated complex where I stay, there's a senior gentleman who is in his 90s. So when I speak to him, he remembers his days when, as a boy of 18, his father took him from Dhaka to Mumbai and put him on a ship to England. At the age of 18, in 1953, the boy disembarked at Tilbury and has lived a full life, and then has now settled in his hometown. So when I continue my walk, I imagine this gentleman today as our protagonist in this debate, perhaps, because the subject of the debate is works best. Indians work best. It is a comparative issue. It is not to say that they are not working well in India. They work best when they are abroad and or have immigrated. Now, the simple definition of works best would be translated into productivity terms is higher income, better living, better achievement, a good career. There are so many. It's not only the income bracket, but they work best because you put any living organism in an alien environment, that organism, including a human being, would respond to its challenge in that alien environment and try to grow and try to survive and try to excel. Now let us take a personal example. I an introduction was given about me, and I feel that maybe I do not deserve much of the good words said about me, but I am here in India and have done well. Proof of it is that I could become a member of Calcutta Club. So now that I have done well, I'm not an immigrant, but I'm here before debating on this subject and saying why as an immigrant somebody works well. But that is the tip of the iceberg. My forefathers were immigrants. They were refugees when the partition happened. And our family began anew in 1950. So when I look at my father, who studied in schools which we will only drive past now, my children would not think of admitting my grandchildren there. I think of my uncles from that tenanted premises in Shibpur when my grandfather was a judge and the only earning member of the family. Our family broke the glass ceiling perhaps. My father cracked the civil services and became a police officer. My uncle, just to mention an example, my uncle became a chief engineer and a gold medalist at Statistical Institute. Another uncle became a chief engineer. Another uncle became a senior lawyer. Another uncle is a former High Court judge. Why I say this? I worked well, but they worked best. They were immigrants, they had to survive, they had to make a life for themselves, and these 70 years took one generation of the family. In fact, it covered 3 generations of the family. The third is sitting here, speaking to you, standing here speaking to you. The 4th generation, my daughter, when she went to England, and she is there pursuing a career in law, I told her that after 70 years, you are migrating. We migrated from native Borishal to Kolkata, and it has taken us 70 years to come here. And now you're migrating, do what you do best, work best. So the thesis is simple, that you put Indians, why Indians? You put anybody, you put a living organism, you put a human being, you put him in an alien environment. It is not, in fact sometimes I wonder why members of the opposition team, my friends on the other side, are at all expending energy on this, because it is obvious. Because it is obvious that when we immigrate, when we come to a foreign shore where things are unknown, you have to settle down, you are supposed to work at your best in order to make a name. And this is not about a lot of individual names may be taken during this debate. Individual first ladies, individual individual astronauts like Sunita Williams, individual gentlemen like V.S. Naipaul or Salman Rushdie. I am not on names. If you take a statistical average, you take a group of people doing the same job here and a group of people doing the same job out there, you will find the works best, the term Indians work best, translated into productivity, standard of living, and achievement on a broader scale, apart from a material scale, is something which I am not denying for a moment, that in India we do not have the facilities or resources, we do not have talented people. Dr. Kunal Shakar points out that this is an irony in a debate, and correctly so, and wonderfully put, that we are here speaking to you. We have also succeeded in our respective careers. We have done well. But the emphasis again, I remind the audience, remind my friends on the opposition, is they work best. It's a comparative issue, and comparatively speaking, if you take statistical averages, the median part of it is like my family story. They worked best, and therefore they created the situation where I work well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Justice Talukdar. Honestly speaking, we are very afraid of justices speaking these days. And I was actually hanging on to every syllable you said, that should you mention any insects down the way. So You stayed off the centipedes and millipedes, and that was a big favor to this evening. Most of your speech was good news, apart from one fact that you were a member of the Calcutta Club. Now, which is not too bad a place, but generally the week before and after the elections are terrible, you know, because it is even worse than the national elections. But overall, we are extremely convinced, Justice, you did well. You were harping on the statistics. The Auditor General of India, 3 years back, published a set of figures where they tried to compare that how the average earnings of an Indian over here, who like some of us are in the delusion of grandeur that they've done well for themselves, compared to somebody overseas, the median ratio stands at somewhere 20 to 25:1, but that was before the rupee declined, right? So currently, the rupee threatening to reach 3 figures right now. So very nice opening from Justice. Pradeep, your turn.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to invite a speaker who was Sandip's favorite and my favorite too, and that's Mayuri Mukherjee, who started off with life sciences, drifted to sociology, and is now doing a PhD in anthropology. I think she's still finding her best.
I think somewhere in her speech, Mayuri will tell us how deftly and skillfully she's been dribbling around Donald Trump. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. It is unfortunate that we have to speak of Dr. Sandip Chatterjee in terms of the past, yet I consider it my profound honor to be able to cherish his memory through my speech today. In fact, the crux of my speech comes from a personal interaction that I had one day when I was visiting Dr. Chatterjee in his Park Clinic chambers. And I was seated in his room and I was admiring the various artifacts on his wall, chief of which were his wildlife photography, the photographs that he had taken. When he saw my roving eye, observant as he ever was, and said, "Amar dorjar pechone je kobitata ache seta porecho?" And before I could even turn my head, his baritone boomed and he started reciting, "Bohu din dhore, bohu krosh dure, bohu ব্যয় kori, bohu desh ঘুরে। দেখিতে গিয়াছি পর্বতমালা, দেখিতে গিয়াছি সিন্ধু, দেখা হয় নাই চক্ষু মিলিয়া, ঘর হতে শুধু 2 পা ফেলিয়া, একটি ধানের শীষের ওপর একটি শিশির বিন্দু." This poem, he explained to me, was written by Rabindranath Tagore for a then 8-year-old Satyajit Ray. And Rabindranath Tagore handed this poem over to Satyajit Ray and said, "Boro hole bujhbe." For those who are unable to understand the Bengali poem, it speaks of traveling many miles to seek beauty in the hills and in the mountains, only to realize that the most extraordinary thing is in your own backyard. It is a dewdrop, not just any dewdrop, but the one on a rice stalk. The reason I'm reciting this poem and the way I would like to approach this motion is through the themes of rootedness, belonging, and the value of being in one's own environment, a philosophical argument that supersedes any statistical or personal argument that you may hear from the other side today. A dewdrop does not have any value in the sense that it does not really produce anything, if productivity is truly the measure that we must take in this debate today. There's a very common joke. If you ask a Bengali, "What is your dream job?" they say, "I do not dream of labor. I prefer my afternoon nap." In such a case, reducing a human being to what they can produce is inherently the flaw in this motion today. Yet every time side proposition argues, that is what they will hold on to. We must remember that there are several ways to categorize a person. If today someone says that Dr. Sandip Chatterjee performed best as a doctor, that is true. And of course, in terms of definition, best can be only one thing. But I have seen the man, as many of us have, in social settings, in cultural settings, in settings of debate. He performed best in all those roles. And as do all these people here sitting who perform best in various ways. So the idea today is that while side proposition can prove to you that there are more opportunities abroad, movement, of course, is not a bad thing. In fact, having this debate in Calcutta Club is very dangerous 50% have been immigrants at one time, and their sons and daughters, all 100% are immigrants. However, the idea is that Indians may migrate for better opportunities, and side proposition may provide a slew of better opportunities in examples. However, that does not come inherently because they are immigrants. The other idea of the diaspora providing a lot of cultural significance and big name and bringing a lot of glory to Indians is also true. However, the inherent nature of an Indian to work hard is a cultural output of India itself. Our best immigrants who perform best in foreign shows are all trained here, nurtured here through school, through education, or nurtured here through culture and socialization, which makes them the kind of immigrant that they are today. And whether you are an immigrant in temporary terms or whether you choose to live there permanently, the values and the rootedness come from where you have been born, where you have been raised. And while I deeply appreciate the opening speech on side proposition and relate deeply because my forefathers are also from Borishal, a very important distinction to be made is that there is a very distinct difference between a refugee and an immigrant, in the sense that a refugee had no option but to move. That is the story of our forefathers. They had to come here out of extreme need, because out of fear of persecution, out of loss, and they saw a lot of pain and struggle, and a lot of their heart, they definitely worked best, but the circumstances of them working best was very different. An immigrant has everything and moves out of want. And that is a very specific want and a form of privilege that is cultivated from the setting here. Today's side proposition has to prove that Indians not only emigrate in terms of working best, and side opposition has to prove that working best is the only measure of productivity. Economic productivity is the only measure of an immigrant. Unless they are able to tangibly prove that to the audience, their side of the motion does not stand. Thank you.
Mayuri, very well spoken. You know, as you mentioned Rabindranath in 1913, probably you've mentioned a person who was the most restless of all souls. As he was wondering the dewdrop on his doorstep, Rabindranath, perhaps him as a person, and when Shantiniketan was coming into its own, every few months he would really go searching for people, starting from Europe, starting from Japan, China, wherever, who would come, visit, enrich his place. And it was round about that time that the first travel regulations of the world were introduced. It was at the height of the First World War. During 1914 and 1915, there was no concept of visas before that. The entire terminology, the phraseology of visas come into effect at the height of the First World War, as Rabindranath is riding the high tide of universalism. And on that note, we ask the second speaker for the proposition, Shupriya, to come and defend the motion.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, may I take half a minute to just say and express how honored I am to be speaking at the Dr. Sandip Chatterjee Memorial Debate. I'm sure over the next 1 hour or so, both sides of the table will have many points to disagree on, but this one we agree that it is indeed a high privilege and honor. With that, Chairperson Sir, ladies and gentlemen, and friends from the opposition, I stand here in favor of the motion, Indians work best as immigrants. And let me clarify. Am I trying to say, or are any of us trying to say that we don't work well in India? Obviously not. Look at this room. Shining examples, so many of them, so many success stories. It would be a futile argument to say that Indians don't work well in India. I'm saying something else. I'm saying that when Indians leave familiar territory, comfort zones, home ground, something that they take for granted, some of our distinct Indian qualities shine hard and bright. What are those qualities? Adaptability, resilience. What are those qualities? Ambition, something we lose if we go on living here, and something that we look upon with great affection, jugaad, or resourcefulness. Very importantly, other than this, as Mayuri said, and I'm agreeing with her, we carry our ability to carry our roots, our values, without being imprisoned, burdened, or saddled or weighed down by them. Those values become our strengths. We don't have to go very far to establish this. Look at this city, look at Calcutta, look at Bengal. Story after story, Bengalis have been immigrating for generations. I may ruffle some feathers, but the fact is the Bengali in Calcutta who loves his lad, ask him how life is, and he'll say cholche. Ask him how work is, and he'll say chaliye jacchi. At best, he'll say hobe, dekchi, kochi. But the immigrant Bengali doesn't say hobe or doesn't even dream of saying hobe or hobe na. He says hotei hobe. And he doesn't even say hotei hobe, he makes it happen. Not once, repeatedly, again and again. Not as an exception, but as a striking, repeated pattern across geographies, across fields of work. The fact is, Indians who cross borders go on to leave their marks in a plethora of fields: science, social science, literature, art, economics. Some obvious examples have to be stated. Look at Swami Vivekanand, 1893, goes to Chicago, expands the Western encounter with Vedanta and Hindu thought. Look at our Pandit Ravi Shankar. Sitar has been being played in India for eons, for generations. But come a George Harrison, come Beatles, and suddenly the sitar is not just an instrument, it becomes a global cultural phenomenon. In 1969, Swami Prabhupada goes to New York and establishes ISKCON. And that small step goes on to become a worldwide movement. Closer home, of course, and more recently, we have Nobel laureates such as Amartya Sen or Vijay Vinayak Banerjee. Different people, different generations, different fields, one underlying common phenomena. The Indian enters a new environment and something expands. Of course, how can I forget the Silicon Valley, where 1 in every 4, ladies and gentlemen, 1 in every 4 tech employees is an Indian born. What happens, therefore? What are we trying to say, that the Indian suddenly overnight becomes brighter, more intelligent, more hardworking when he crosses the border? No. The Indian talent meets a different ecosystem. An ecosystem of capital, of world-class institutions, research, technology, and a global market. And there, we don't just mark our attendance, we learn to punch above our weight. Why do we do that? Partly because I think the immigrant is self-selected. When you leave behind the family and the comfortable grounds, you say, in effect, I want to test myself somewhere. I will prove my worth somewhere, and then the ecosystem meets and tests you further, with the result that the immigration doesn't create capability, it creates the condition in which the capability shines brighter and stronger. And I want to stress on something else here. We're not just limiting our discussions to America or UK alone. Look at any corner of the world. Indian immigrants have gone to the farthest corners of Asia, Africa, Middle East, Far East. No corner of the world is spared. Citing an example, Narendra Raval, a young teenager from Kenya, from India, goes on to Kenya and builds the Devaki Group into a major African conglomerate. Look at the Tata Motors in UK, 44,000 jobs via Jaguar and Land Rover, practically keeping the British economy going. Look at Ellen Mittal, a local Calcuttan who studied at St. Xavier's and Nopani Vidyalaya, goes to Indonesia, starts a small steel firm, and then establishes ArcelorMittal. Look anywhere and you'll find the Indian diaspora: London, New York, Dubai, which is often referred to as the best Indian city, Singapore, Toronto, and everywhere else. We've built communities And the best part, the most remarkable part is we carry India with us. Our food, festival, music, language, culture. Look at Durga Puja in London or look at Diwali anywhere in the world. We become global without becoming rootless. Now, some people travel, and in some cases, ideas travel. Yoga traveled, music traveled. Hell, even our humble holod, haldi, lying in every Indian kitchen goes abroad, and what does it turn into? Turmeric latte or latte turmeric. We may laugh about it, but there's a serious point under it. And that is that an Indian idea has to leave India before the world discovers its glorious value. And there's another fascinating dimension to the working best. The Indian immigrant goes abroad and suddenly he discovers something fantastic. He no longer spits. He no longer honks. He no longer dashes from the rear seat to the front of the aircraft, making a frantic exit. He's punctual. And what happens when he returns? The same person within a few weeks or months at best rediscovers those vices. What happened? Has the Indian changed? No, the environment has changed. India has always produced extraordinary people, there's no doubt about that. And make one point which I'd like to leave you with is I'm not arguing and I'm not trying to say that Indians work best abroad because India is inadequate. I'm arguing something more positive. I'm saying that we are extraordinarily good at turning unfamiliar ground into our own global playground. That is why, ladies and gentlemen of the Calcutta Club, I believe Indians work best as immigrants. Thank you very much.
The last two speakers, thankfully, have brought the issue of productivity and opportunity and wealth into the discussion. We may be the third or fourth largest economy in the world, but our per capita income remains below $1,300 a year. So is it very wrong for an individual to seek to move to countries where their income will be closer to the global average? But nonetheless, working best versus working well, the opportunities of a global ecosystem and the opportunities of a, thank you, I get the hint. Yeah. They always do this to me. And the opportunities of the Indian land. But at the same time, I really wonder if anybody will touch on the fact that India has one of the fastest growing economies in the world. In that case, why do people migrate to other lands in search of opportunities? Anyway, our third speaker is none other than Professor Krishna Sen. Krishna Di, to me, a legendary debater of many, many years, who has taught at the University of Leeds besides her stint in Calcutta University as head of the Department of English. She has many, many of her students in the audience here. Krishna Di, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. I'm very, very touched to be here because at Shondeep's first memorial meeting in this very hall, I was speaking about my memories of Shondeep, who was a very, very good, much younger friend, as well as being a fellow debater and a fellow Rotarian. And I want to share one little nugget, which I don't know if it is well enough known to the members of CDC. About 13 or 14 years ago, 13 or 14, right, when CDC was being, thought about, Shondeep called me and said, Krishna Di, we are thinking of starting a kind of a debating environment in Kolkata again, like the old British Council debates that we used to be in. And will you be a member and be one of the people starting it? And I said, yes, Shondeep, what do I have to do? Well, you have to meet Kunal and myself and a couple of others, maybe it was Pradeep also, I think, in Calcutta Club. And I said, sure, what time? And Shondeep said, well, Kunal and I have to finish our chamber work, our medical chambers. So say 10:30 p.m. And I said, Shondeep, you want me to get a divorce? So, Well, I'm so glad that even though I couldn't get to meetings at 10:30 p.m., CDC is flourishing today. A tribute to Sandip, Kunal, Pradeep, and all those who could come at 10:30 p.m. to Calcutta Club. To get on to our topic, and I'm holding now I look at it, okay, because you remember John Donne, ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. So very soon it will toll for me. 6:56, okay. 8 and 6 are 14, okay, got it. Right. Now, I am very, very aware, as the speakers in the proposition have said, about Indians and their ability to break the glass ceiling everywhere. I mean, the Prime Minister has started meeting the diaspora as part of his diplomatic soft power, and they are there not only in the usual white places, but in Fiji, in Seychelles, in Brunei, strangest places. There was a group of Indian diaspora meeting him. So I know that they can reinvent their environment. It's not that they just fall into a good environment. Think of Sundar Pichai, think of Arvind Krishna. They reinvent their environment. Think of Indra Nui. I mean, that is the reason why, neither God nor the devil like an Indian immigrant in either heaven or hell. There is God sitting on his golden throne, watching with benevolence as rows of people with bowed heads are praying, bored to death, because there's only prayer to do and nothing else. And along comes an Indian and says, aha, this is where I can turn myself into a fake sadhu like Asanam Bapu and liven up this environment. And soon there is so much, in heaven that God is holding his head in frustration, wondering what to do. An Indian came and upset everything. And hell, there is the devil sitting on his golden throne, watching with glee as the evil and the damned boil and howl in boiling oil that he has provided to curse them. And along comes an Indian and says, boiling oil and for free? And immediately starts a little shop making pakoras and samosas and ninkis. And all the denizens of hell are having a gala time munching them, not being afraid of boiling oil at all. And the devil is holding his head in his hands and says, why did I let this Indian in? So Indians do transform their environment. I admit it. But you know something? There is a fallacy in the argument of the proposition. And one of my main areas is theory, so I do tend to be a little analytic. The term immigrant has been broadly overgeneralized. Ladies and gentlemen, not every immigrant is Sundar Pichai, right? And not every immigrant either. I have read Calcutta Chronicles, Miss Newar. I liked it very much. Yes, and you did mention in one part, the affluent Bengalis who come, and they are the ones who own all those flats along, the bypass, and are the biggest art collectors, not us. We don't have that money. But they are not the only Indian immigrants. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to remember, what do you see when you go to Heathrow? Punjabi sweepers and washroom attendants. A research scholar of mine who's teaching in a university in, very low-graded Malaysia tells me that even in Malaysia, all the dishwashers in the smaller restaurants and the labor, along with the Indonesians in the rubber plantations, are Tamils. So how can we say that affluence is the marker of the Indian immigrant? Have we forgotten these people? Prime Minister Modi, in fact, when he has his diaspora meet, should invite these people also and tell them, look, there are better opportunities, come to India. Of course, I do understand that if you earn $1, you can send 97 rupees home, $1 US. But immigrants are of all shapes and colors. please don't only think of the middle class and the successful. There are immigrants, and we are forgetting them if we believe what the proposition says. Secondly, Indians work well as immigrants in certain environments, tech, corporate. There are other professions which are very culture specific. For example, advertising. You need to know the culture to be a really important advertising executive. For example, do you remember that surf ad? The lady showing a dirty white t-shirt, dipping it into a bucket of surf, and then bringing out a sparkling white t-shirt? The same ad, it was all in print in those days, was run in West Asia, and surf bombed. Why? Because their script goes the other way. Clean shirt goes into surf and comes out dirty shirt. What about law? The great lawyers here who have done their law degrees in India, can they practice in the United States? No, they can't. So not all professions travel. Please remember that. Let me analyze why there is this fascination about being abroad. Kwame Nkrumah, he wrote this book, if you remember, Neocolonialism. The last vestiges of imperialism. I will argue not about economic neocolonialism, but psychological neocolonialism. Is that the first, second, third, or fourth bell? I have a minute. Wow. So I will talk about something else. I'm going to extrapolate Nkrumah to talk about psychological neocolonialism. So we don't have opportunities? C.V. Raman got the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930 by formulating the Raman effect. Where? Okay, all of you will screw up your noses because this is not perhaps the great campus of the world. In Calcutta University, my alma mater. Jagadish Chandra Bose, Prafulla Chandra Rai, Satyendranath Bose, all in colonial India, major scientists. Why do we not produce such great scientists anymore? Hopefully we still do. We did land on the dark side of the moon. So there's no need for this psychological neocolonialism and to be Gen Z and to be wannabe. Yeah? My Gen Z is Pawan Kumar Chandana, who founded Astroroot and sent up on his first attempt Bikram 1 that you saw on TV about 2 weeks ago. And the average age of his scientists in the startup is 28. Those are my Gen Zs of India. Okay? Not the wannabes. Okay, we are poor. But I have got a fairly well-running book on American literature and culture. What about American poverty? How many of you have gone and seen, as I have, the Native American reservations, which are worse than our slums, the plight of the Pacific Islanders in Hawaii, the inner city housing of the African Americans, the Chicano field laborers in American plantations, who are all Americans and not second-class citizens. They are 20 second-class citizens in America today. And you know what is bad? We acknowledge our poverty. We feel we should do something about it. In the United States, these people are invisible. And I know about it because I've studied it. So, I would ask the opposition, please, give us a bigger picture of the immigrants. They are successful. But we have many success stories here. So why do we still want to go abroad? India will get there. We just have had 80 years. Think of what the United States was 80 years after it became independent from Britain in 1776. It was a backward country. This is an era of globalization and we move faster, that's all. So, honored members of the proposition, and all of you in the audience who tend to think that Indians do better abroad, Please, let us drop this psychological neocolonialism. Let us please decolonize our minds. Thank you.
Krishnadi, Krishnadi, you're okay, Krishnadi? Yes. Krishnadi, you were mentioning advertisements, right? So when Horlicks was introduced in India, Horlicks in England was supposed to be a drink to be had before, like a nightcap. It made you sleep better. But then very quickly Procter & Gamble and others realized that that line would never sell in this country. And from being a smoothing nightcap, Horlicks became an energy drink for 100 crore people of this country. And it is so apt that you have raised the problem of the fact of Indian migration to the Fijian Islands, to the Pacific, because Indian immigration actually started with the collapse of slavery. Because that is where history comes into its own. It is when the slavery circuits of Liverpool and Bristol through the English Channel collapses that a very subversive traffic of getting Indians out to work in the plantations. Indentured labor, because the story of Indian immigration is actually kicks off with the story of indentured labor. Krishnadi, thank you for absolutely turning the topic on its head. And who else next? Devdipto, you've got the job cut out for you. Young man, be equal to the task. Come on.
Devdipto is like Sandip, the Zavarian of the year for 2026, as Sandip was many years ago. So we are very happy
your blessings, thank you.
Yes,
so
and he's dangerously Gen Z, as Supriya points out.
Gen Z. You know, when we were that age, we called ourselves young adults.
Hello. So we had a lot of discussion on the Gen Z of our nation today, and I'm reminded of our alumni meet yesterday. There was this phrase we learned: learn, earn, return. And I think as the Gen Z of India, I'm in consonance with Professor Shen. This is exactly what the national Gen Z of our nation would aspire to do: learn, earn, return. Members of the House, myself being a Zavarian, Dr. Sharkar being a Zavarian, and the late Dr. Sandip Chatterjee being a Zavarian, I'm very glad that another Zavarian was mentioned early on in this debate, Robindranath, and his beautiful poem, Shotti. The Shishir Bindu in his backyard might have been beautiful, but the same Robindranath, universal that he is, also says, Amar chokhe to shokoli shobhon, shokoli nobin, shokoli bimol, era shokoli amar moto. So, you know, there is beauty everywhere to look at. And definitely in the spirit of Jivananando, abar ashibo phire. We'll come back to augment the resources that have shaped us. Learn, earn, and return. I'm glad that Mr. Guptu mentioned that ours was one of the fastest growing economies. And a big culprit behind that is foreign remittances. Members of the House, there's approximately 3.4 to 3.5% of the Indian GDP comes in from foreign remittances. It's a very funny thing. You know, 3 days back, I checked the conversion rate of the Indian rupee with the dollar. It was close to 96.65 Indian rupees per dollar. I checked it yesterday, 95.7. I checked it today while I was sitting here. I reached the earliest in the sports complex, 95.78 Indian rupees. This is how that conversion fluctuates. So we well know that when we talk of productivity in the tangible sense that Ms. Mukherjee was mentioning, this is a big reason why we emigrate. There is a lucrative financial gain to be had over there where we learn, earn, return back to our country. Members of the House, I also agree that when we talk of being the best, to work as the best, as a student of life science, it draws my mind to what we do in functioning, what we do in our behavior, what we do in our niche. This is a very fundamental ecological terminology of our niche, our habit. And this is where because ours is a country of competition with its ever-growing population and ever-saturating fields, ours is a country of competition. So the niche overlap which happens over here leads to immense amount of competition. The greater the degree of overlap, the more is the destructive level it has on the people, which is why we emigrate elsewhere, which is why we become immigrants and we work best over there, whatever nation it might be, because they are provident, because that niche is yet left undiscovered. Ms. Newar mentioned Pandit Ravi Shankar. Surely he has boomed much, much more because he brought a sitar talent to the West, to which this was hitherto unknown. So the niche was left empty for him to capitalize on. We spoke of Rabindranath. Rabindranath got his Nobel, and a big reason for that is his interaction with Yeats, because he went to England and his work over there, the English translation of the Gitanjali, because that niche was left exposed for him to colonize. And since Professor Shen mentioned the colonization of the mind, I'll be glad to tell you nowadays there's a phraseology come up of reverse colonization. There are people of economics in the audience perhaps, they would know about the bandwagon effect. বাংলায় খুব সুন্দর একটা কথা আছে গড্ডলিকা প্রবাহ. This is exactly what the bandwagon effect means. We keep on committing to something because this seems appealing. So we keep on investing in that. We see a trend. We see a lot of numbers investing in that. And so we like to align with it because there are chances it will be more, sure, more certain. And because of this, motion emerges today. The bandwagon effect, the problem of brain drain, which is a problem question mark, and of this niche overlap where we search for better opportunities. We agree that not all immigrants are equal, but if you see the Gaussian distribution, you see this curve, the median is where the best comes in. Yes, Sundar Pichai is also an example. Not everyone is a Sundar Pichai, but we take the best, we take that yardstick, comparing it to some others. I will have you all note that the employment to population ratio within our nation, is there any guess what it could be around? It's slightly upwards of 50%. In a country of 1.35 plus billion people, around 53 to 54% is the employment to population ratio. For a nation which tries to aspire to be the new face of the global Southeast, this is a very low number. China has it at around 72%. And members of the House, we've spoken a lot about how Indians go out and transform their environment to their needs. Definitely, Darwinian selection allows us to be this way, but we also to look within ourselves sometimes, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says. They are trivial things compared to what lies within us. And I'll have you know that the race of Indians is a race which has immigration and immigrants coded into its DNA from the time of the steppe land 40,000 years ago, when people would come down from the grasslands, to the Mongols much later, to the Mughals, to the British, to the Harappans. We are a race of immigrants from Central Asia, from other parts of Asia, and we share DNA with the aboriginals who've gone into Oceania. So that has made us what biology likes to call generalist species. We are not specialist species because of repeated recombination and addition and augmenting of our genetic machinery. We are well equipped to deal with adverse and diverse conditions all over the world, which makes us the best as immigrants. We have extremely heightened tolerance compared to our lifestyle here. If you go over there, that providence only allows us to grow further and further. So this is exactly why genetically, evolutionarily, we are suited to this niche perfectly. Once again, we've spoken a lot about how we transform the environment there. Perhaps I would remember on 4th of July, and I was sitting in the place of the timekeeper on that day, we had a debate in Bangla in the pavilion, which devolved into a political motion, but it was পরিবর্তন উচ্ছ্বাস হতাশা এর কি পুনরাবৃত্তি ঘটেছে? And I think news from 2 days past with what is happening in the Jadavpur University and what is happening in Presidency yesterday, with the kind of adversity that students, a large portion of the Indian diaspora are facing, it only makes sense. It becomes a concern of safety for students, the intelligentsia of this country, to go out, give their services and learn, earn and return. Because we oftentimes question how life outside may be, but I think it's time to also inspect the surroundings which shape us and act accordingly, because these are not things conducive to education, these are not things conducive to living, which is why this need is emerging more and more and more, with words like Tandob and surgical strike becoming very common references This should not be the case. And as the Gen Z of India, I would not want my India to be this way at all. So as I conclude, I would like to leave you with some parting thoughts. As somebody who loves my nation and as somebody who would love to come back, learn, earn, and return, this is a mantra which I would personally love to follow. We would see what our roots are, we would go expand, we would go diffuse, we would go exchange, and we would come back enriched. And in that way, I think, members of the House, we would have won in life being the best as immigrants possible. And once again, remembering Rabindranath, understanding that এরা সকলেই আমার মতন. Thank you so much.
Well done. Well done, Debito. Please sit. As a fellow Zaverian, about 100 years senior to you, we would definitely not want you to get into the same troubles we did. So a couple of times you mentioned Jadavpur University and the rest of it. I keep on forgetting who were the contesting parties in Jadavpur University, but one of them certainly do not believe that any Aryan came into India. They always believe that India has been the flower bed of everything ancient and everything original. And like certain people who are entirely now non-biological, we have populated the world with wisdom or the lack of it. So it's too early in life to get into problems, right? So you've seen what's happened in Jadavpur and whereabouts, so be a bit careful. And on the economic front, also take a little bit of care. We have been foreign direct investment negative for the good part of last 10 months. So our stocks are running as low as electricity in Bangladesh at this point of time as far as foreign direct investment is concerned. So if I were you, I would not hedge my bets on that. On that note, we hand over to Pradeep.
Thank you, Kunal. Devdipto, my suggestion to you, Charles Allen, before he died, wrote a book called Aryans. It's just been published by an editor. Read it. Before you venture into anything on the Aryan invasion theory, just remember, as Kunal said, you're a young man. He can afford to get into trouble with his podcasts. You can't, right? But anyway, what a wonderful speech. I'm so glad that we have you here. The third speaker from the opposition is Professor Shumantro Bose, who will tell us why he thinks that India is a better environment. Perhaps we do better, we do best when we are here. Shumantro is a long-time teacher and a research guide at the London School of Economics. Over to you, Shumantro.
Chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen, I rise to oppose the proposition which is simply not maintainable. It is at best, a gross oversimplification, and at worst, an outright fallacy. Let me explain why. Was Dr. Sandip Chatterjee an immigrant? I know that he went abroad, he lived abroad, he studied abroad. I believe that he may even have learned to drive abroad, or maybe he relearned the art of driving, just as I did. I learned driving in Calcutta at the age of 17 or 18, and then many years later, as a thoroughly mature adult, I had to unlearn all of that and relearn driving in London. Dr. Chatterjee was definitely not an immigrant. He was rooted in the life of this city, this state, and this country. And we all know that he achieved great things, not just in his profession, but he left his mark much beyond his profession. Would he have done better had he, say, settled in England, or gone to the United States? Well, in all honesty, we don't know for sure. But I strongly doubt it. Here I'm remembered of another doctor of a generation prior to Sandip's. He was actually a great friend of Sandip's father, Dr. Shubir Chatterjee. That's my own father, Dr. Shishir Bose. He graduated from the Calcutta Medical College in 1948, and then he trained at Sheffield in England, was a junior doctor at the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children in London. He also did training stints in Vienna and in Bern in Switzerland. But he was not an immigrant. As a mid-career or an early mid-career doctor, he had the chance to go to the United States for a couple of years and train in pediatric radiology at the Harvard Medical School. He had ample opportunities to become an immigrant, but he too achieved great things in his profession and beyond as a non-immigrant. Let me unpack the words that make up this thoroughly flawed proposition. Indians, well, we know more or less who Indians are. They are a particular subspecies of Homo sapiens. Work, labor, which takes a great diversity of forms, as we have been reminded. Best, superlative. Good, better, best. Immigrants. People who have, for one reason or another, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes involuntarily, as we've heard, gone away from their country of origin and lived and built lives and work careers abroad, wherever that may be. Sundar Pichai, Satta Nadella, Amartya Sen. Have we forgotten that Amartya Sen was almost 40 years old when he took his first job abroad as a professor at the London School of Economics? He taught for many years, first at Jadavpur University and then at the Delhi School of Economics. Would Amartya Sen not have got the Nobel Prize had he stayed in this country? Again, to be honest, we don't know for sure, but I think that the odds are that he would have won the Nobel sooner or later wherever he lived and worked. Because, and this is a very important point, the quality of work is influenced by environments. But huge research budgets, world-class labs, massive salaries, there's more to a work environment than those things. Amartya Sen would have got the Nobel whether he went to Harvard or not. Harvard needed him more than he needed Harvard, because work is ultimately something innate. It's deeply innate to the individual, their talent, their potential. The other problem with this proposition, which I think is a fatal problem, is what is known in social science as false causality, or, a bit short of causality, spurious correlation. Someone has an Indian abroad, a transplanted Indian, has excelled. Because, why? Because they have gone abroad to a superior work environment. That may be true in some cases. It can't be denied in all cases. But ultimately, work is something innate. It's about the individual. A truly talented and motivated individual will flourish wherever they are. we've all already heard the incredible lineup of world-class scientists to globally renowned poets that this city, this Bengal, and India at large has produced. I'd like to end with a little anecdote. You've heard that I'm, among other things, in addition to my professional responsibilities, the director of Netaji Research Bureau at Netaji Bhavan in Calcutta. Well, Subhash Chandra Bose spent significant chunks of his life abroad, as you know. From 1933 to 1936, he was in Europe almost continuously. Again, from the beginning of 1941 till the end in August 1945, he was abroad. Okay? Not by choice entirely, but because of necessity. In the 1930s, the alternative would have been to rot in prison. In the 1940s, again, the same. So he decided to do something useful abroad. Picture this scene. In March or April 1943, he's traveling by submarine from Northern Europe to East Asia. The vast darkness of the Indian Ocean, before that the Atlantic Ocean. During the nights, when the submarine surfaces, he and his sole Indian companion, Abid Hassan, are up on the deck, the roof or the bridge of the submarine to get a little bit of fresh air and get out of the claustrophobia of the U-boat. And Abid Hassan asks his leader various pointed questions. One question he asked was, what have you found most annoying about public life? And Netaji replied, chote chote logo ka khushamad karna, having to flatter the vanity of small people. Another time, Abid Hassan asked him, what have you found most painful in your life? Netaji replied, without a flicker, without a moment of hesitation, to be in exile from India. He clearly knew where he worked best. On that, I rest my case.
Thanks, Sumantro. Rumor has it that Amartya Sen found it pretty difficult to get his theory of scarcity and starvation published from Harvard. And there was a lot of sort of economics jugglery going on out there between the right of center and left of center economists. So ultimately it was Professor Sen between Cambridge and Harvard that he had to take a choice as who would hoist him up for the Nobel Prize nomination, because sadly even the economists are prey to their politics. Such are the ways of the world. Very well spoken, especially the ending with Netaji on the submarine. And we are now at the hands of an orthopedic surgeon to brace up and prop up the topic as the last speaker for the proposition, Dr. Kaushik Ghosh. Kaushik, well done.
The immigrant chairperson, Dr. Kunal Shorkar, I love him very much. He stopped the clock when Professor Krishna Sen was speaking, and I timed. She was given 1 minute, 20 seconds extra. I hope he's as indulgent towards me. Yes. I thank my lucky stars that Professor Bose spoke just before me, because when this motion was first proposed approximately 10 days ago when I came back to India and I heard that I was going to be one of the speakers, I'm honored because Sandip was my mentor in college when I started debating in '83, 4 decades ago. Was that I wanted to mention at the very beginning a gentleman who is in the news now because of a gentleman who has talked about him, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, I'm alluding to. My tribute to him is because he performed best as an immigrant. The leaping tiger, the fact that the Indian flag was planted in Manipur in 1946, even before India became independent, was perhaps, arguably, because Netaji was an immigrant. Having said that, I will come to a very nice friend of mine who is now a fully tenured professor at Harvard University in genetics, and he is on the research panel for an AIDS vaccine. Now, he passed out of Rajabaja Science College, but then he went on to Albert Einstein Institute of Microbiology, then he's at Harvard. Whenever he comes back to Calcutta, I ask him, don't you want to return? He said, no, because I don't have the opportunity. We have an anthropologist and a geneticist who started the argument. May I quote a very famous anthropologist who's also the poet of the United States? No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. Why have Indians chosen to go abroad? When, where, the waves I'll come to later. But Mayuri was saying that she was interested in that the first dewdrop at dawn. She's now more interested in the snowflakes in New York. Why, I kindly ask you? Why couldn't you stay out here? I'm not blaming you. There are opportunities. Professor Bose said that you have to learn and unlearn. That is exactly what the motion is, the House is talking about today. The immigrant has the ability to learn and unlearn and become winner. Long years ago, a gentleman, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who was an immigrant in Natal, South Africa, had said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Why do we win? You had heard Neil out here, I call him Neil Devdipto, who is talking about Darwinian evolution, genetics. 65,000 years ago, the first migration happened from Africa to South India. The second migration happened between 5,000 and 7,000 BC, when a group of people from Zagran, which is now in Iran, Persia, came to central India. And then 1,000 to 1,500 BC, the European steppes had the migration, and that created the Aryan civilization, the Vedic civilization. Indians, gentlemen, have always, ladies and gentlemen, have always been immigrants. And that is why we have it in our genetic mold, in our structure, to create that environment where we succeed anywhere. Professor Bose, we are not talking about Indians migrating to superior environment. They will win anywhere. There were 6 waves of migration. The first wave happened long years ago in the 16th century when Indians went to Sumatra, the Malay Peninsula, the ports of Southeast Asia. They went because they wanted to spread their culture. Mayuri, we're not talking about the people who have got out of the roots. In fact, if you look at the situation of the Indian diaspora all over the world, we have created that cultural bubbles everywhere. We have Tagore Institutes, we have film festivals. With the Edinburgh Theatre Festival last year, my friend's group was one of the 4 Bengali theatre groups, just Bengali. I'm not even talking about other languages of India. So we are not getting out of our roots. We are taking our roots everywhere, replanting them, learning and unlearning, and again learning again, Professor Bose, with due respect to you. Now, the first migration, as I said, was in 16th century. Then we had what Pradeep was talking about, indentured labor. As I said, no one leaves home unless the home is the mouth of a shark. Why did they leave? Because there were no opportunities. India has huge opportunity today. I again reiterate, like Supriya out here, that we are not saying Indians are not performing well out here. They were. But then the opportunities are less. They can blossom. They can become stronger. They can create greater things. How? I'll prove it. But then there's, after the indentured labor in the 1830s to early 20th century, next workers to East Africa. Then you had in the post-independent period what Professor Shen was talking about, that the technocrats went, the doctors, the engineers, the scientists, the technicians, and that continued. In between, there was a migration of the 60s to the 80s when oil was discovered in the Middle East. So a lot of laborers. Professor Shen, with due respect, we are not only talking about Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, or Indra Nui. I respect the dish cleaner. I respect the sweeper in Malaysia. I respect the guy who is working in a construction firm in Dubai. You know why? Because they're contributing India. How are they contributing? They're contributing because the remittances that are coming out here. We have 19.57 million Indians or Indians of Indian origin who are still passport holders, which comprises 1% of the Indian population, 1%. But the contribution, the remittances that come right to the villages of Kerala, or to the doctors who are coming out and creating hospitals, or the technocrat who is coming back and contributing, is 3.75% of the GDP. That's why Indians work best. We again reiterate that the reason why Indians' migration has been great is not because they cannot work out here. They have hard work, they have adaptability, they have resilience, and the ability to function as a culture. The challenges that the Indian immigrant has to have, and it is very, again, going back to the word the Professor Bose used, learning and unlearning. They have to communicate across cultures, because not all countries are English speaking. They have to compete internationally, and they can, and they have. It's a virgin land. And finally, they build professional networks and deal with uncertainty, and then they win. May I end by saying that at the end of the day, our country's motto is Satyameva Jayate. Truth will triumph. India is giving people roots, the world is giving it wings. Indians are going abroad and creating a situation where he can fly. He is either coming back physically to this country or he is sending remittances. He is creating a better economic model. Again, we are not disrespecting the Indians who are performing out here. As Dr. Sarkar has said at the very beginning, we are comprising of 4 non-immigrants. It's not a question of sour grapes. Yes, I dream sometimes if I had gone to England, if I had been a better doctor, if I had stayed back in the NHS, or if I had the money to come back and create a hospital. True, but it's not a question of sour grapes. We're accepting, we're respecting that Indians have always been better outside, not because they don't have it in them out here, but because they're given the world as a realm where they can function, flourish, and win. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well done, Kaushik. Very well spoken. Very well spoken. You know, you mentioned a lot of trigger events in history that sparked the Indian immigration syndrome, barring one. And the trigger event that sparked the American immigration of 1960s was Yuri Gagarin going to space. It was Yuri Gagarin in space in 1963 that sends the shivers down the spine of the American establishment, and the entire embargo for the scientific, for the engineers, for the technocrats to go to America is lifted off. So it is actually the Russian who lifted the floodgates off and activated the Indian migration to United States. Very well spoken. Pradeep, it's yours.
Thank you, Kaushik. Just a minor correction. The first wave of migration was by the Cholas in the 12th century, not the 16th. As you know, the culture of South Asia and Southeast Asia was substantially transformed by the Indian intervention in that region. But nonetheless, Yuri Gagarin or not, you know, there was this joke in the US, which I think is still substantially true. If you stand at a street corner and say IIT, you have 3 cars rolling up with job offers. So we must be doing something right. On that note, may I request Abhijit to kindly deliver what is the final speech of the first round of speaking, Abhijit Mitro.
Good evening, Mr. Moderators, Madam President, and all my good friends here. I think there is something very flawed with the topic. Let me just take out the topic. Indians work best as immigrants when they go abroad. I think it's just the opposite. Think of the modern civilization today. Is it not because of the immigration from the West to India? The whole industrial revolution was funded by India. The British immigrants came to India, and with the Indian wealth has grown a Western civilization. The entire modern civilization is dependent on 200 years of export of Indian wealth by the immigrants who came to India. Devdipto, you seem to be a fan of Tagore. It is Tagore who said, Hethaয় আর্য, হেথা অনার্য, হেথায় দ্রাবিড় চীন, শকহুন্দ অল মোগল পাঠান, এক দেহে হল লীন. Supriya Newar, you were naming so many Indians successful in the West. You were talking about Vivekananda, Ravi Shankar, then Ellen Mittal. Please remember that all of them are still Indian citizens. They were forever Indian citizens. None of them immigrated to the West. Ellen Mitchell presently is looking for a place to stay. He's left London and now he's presently in Dubai. I don't know where he'll be next. But he's still an Indian citizen. Dr. Kaushik Ghosh was trying to put his cause through by talking about Netaji's achievements in Manipur by hoisting a flag in Manipur, overlooking all his greatest achievements which were in India, in this city, in this country. The greatest achievements by Indians has to be in India. Michael came back, Ashar Cholone Bhule, he had spent several years in England, but ultimately came back to India and achieved success. One of my great proposition speakers talked about Gandhi in Natal. Gandhi was kicked out of a first-class cabin while traveling from Natal to maybe Transvaal. Then he tried his best to elevate the Indians from a status slightly above the Africans, below the Europeans. Half achieved it. Mr. Gandhi comes back to India, and only then Mr. Gandhi becomes the Mahatma. His greatest achievement was in this country, not anywhere else. We are just alluded by a country by the name of United States of America. A country of immigrants, where Indians are not immigrants but late settlers, nothing but that. So all the Sundar Pichais and Satya Nadella who are presently in America, don't count them as immigrants in America. They are the present settlers, the later settlers. So if you discount the country US, then where else? Where have Indians done well? Nowhere. And US, it's the immigrants who have done everything from George Washington to Donald Trump. Everybody is an immigrant there. Somebody Scottish, somebody British, some Germans, and Indians also happen to be there. Some of the immigrants are also from India. And that's how morally also I justify my son presently being in the US. So there are no immigrants there. My good judge, a very good friend, Justice Talukdar, very wisely stuck to his family instead of the insect family. That would have got him into big trouble. Then, to wrap it up, let me now, since I'm the last speaker, I'm sure everybody would, after this debate, go to our good old Calcutta Club, meet our uncles, aunts, good friends, and with a glass of Scotch whiskey in our hand, bless the nation and say how lucky we are to be in this country and not anywhere else. Thank you.
That is exactly what happens when you have a crafty lawyer, for a closing speech in the debate. I was trying to drop subtle hints to these people when they were ascribing the speaking order. They didn't listen to my warning that a crafty lawyer as the last speaker can turn the motion on its head, as Obro did. Well done, Obro did. Very, very well spoken. And in fact, when Gandhi was kicked out of the train, and at that time another thing was happening in the world. Both these things happened in the same year. Vivekananda was giving his speech in Chicago, 1893. So within a few months of one another, two epochal events that changed the Indian ethos for years to come happen. Gandhi gets shoved out of the train, and Vivekananda gets shoved onto the stage. And that changed India for years and years to come. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we have completed our round of speaking, and now we go to the quick fire round. In the quick fire round, the important thing is take a deep breath in and don't breathe again. till you have finished speaking, because you'll have all of 90 seconds to give your summary, and we start with Justice Talukdar. 120.
No extra time to Professor
Please, sir, 2 minutes.
Right. There are a lot of individual examples from the opposition, but we are not here on an individual example. I think Professor Shumantra Bose made a very important presentation. Abhrujit also made, but there was a lot of emphasis on individual examples. I was trying to make a case for the proposition that Indians abroad have crossed a certain physical, psychic threshold where they learn to work best. Again, I repeat, it is not about Gandhi, Nehru, everybody, it is debatable whether they learned to work best abroad and then came back and gave their best here. This psychic threshold, I think the opposition in certain respects was missing the wood for the trees. The emphasis here, Indians work best as immigrants. Now the question is, as immigrants, I have a domestic help who looking after my mother, my aged elderly mother. She has immigrated from a village in Mednipur to Delhi, a simple migration. But her work ethos, her desire to survive in harsh Delhi, away from a comfort of a village life where, of course, she had to do back-breaking labor. She's not an immigrant. She's working best in an alien environment. That is my thesis. It is not about individual performance, and the neo-colonial mindset which Professor Shen was mentoring, it is a way of possibly diverting attention from the central thesis. It's not a question, as I had repeated in my opening speech, it is a question of a statistical average. A sweeper or a menial job person abroad in Malaysia compared to somebody here. Let us compare the job statistics, the earnings, the productivity, the man hours. I think there will be a huge difference. So the central thesis of the proposition survives. As a collective group, as a migratory group, Indians would work best as immigrants.
Thank you, sir. Moyudi.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that has successfully immigrated today is the definition of immigration. Side proposition will have you believe that whether it is Mughal invasion, that is immigration. Whether it is migration from a neighboring state, or they themselves have been using the term migration consistently, that is not immigration. Being a refugee and being an immigrant, definitely different things. So if side proposition does not have their definition of an immigrant clear, there is no way that this motion goes to them. Secondly, for the idea of whether or not, even the name Sundar Pichai comes up a lot, and an accusation has been leveled against me as well, which is that why am I an immigrant now? The truth is that if whoever as a student even conveys to the visa officer that they want to be an immigrant, they will immediately be refused. Students are actually not seen as legal immigrants, especially if they show any immigrant intent, and that is the way that immigration works. Unless you already prove yourself to be the best, you are not considered a worthy immigrant in certain spaces. What the idea of statistical averages also is highly flawed. As we know, median is a much better measure of what is actually the reality. However, all these things aside, the opposition, I have with me what the opposition has shown today. They have shown that Indians are highly successful abroad. They have shown that the diaspora, whatever their work may be, contribute enormously. They have shown that some Indians do have better opportunities abroad. However, what they have not been able to prove is that Indians are more productive abroad just because they are abroad, nor that immigration caused their success, or that productivity is the best measure of human worth. I rest my case. Thank you.
One of the points that I had cited in my speech was about punctuality. Two members of the opposition, one exceeded her time by 2 minutes, and one could not even take up all of his 8 minutes, remembering his scotch. We heard about how Indians don't do well in advertising. May I remind you, barely 3 or 4 kilometers down from here on Gurusadai Road lived Mr. Ram Ray, and he retired as the global president of JWC, J. Walter Thompson. And also, let's remember Piyush Pandey of Ogilvy, global head. Nowhere have we said that Indians cease to be Indians as immigrants. What we've been saying is that we reject the status quo and the chalta hai attitude, and we go on to build businesses, institutions, and innovate. And finally, I have to use the platform to share a beautiful couplet from Mirza Ghalib, who said, हमको मालूम है जन्नत की हकीकत, लेकिन दिल के खुश रखने को गालिब ये ख्याल अच्छा है. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Justice Talukdar, your mother's domestic help is a migrant, not an immigrant. Miss Newar, Mayuri and I shared our total team time. How does that bother you? I was 2 minutes more, she was 2 minutes less. Devdipto, learn and return is what you will have to do. The world is turning rightist. An immigrant is someone who learns and stays. Dr. Ghosh, don't forget Ori Bergson. Time is relative. You live in time, I live in duration. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is turning protectionist. The world is turning right-wing. Forget immigration. Indians have to work best in India because nobody wants outsiders anymore. So, your motion does not stand anymore. Thank you. Dr. Ghosh, I hope you were watching the alarm clock.
Hello. While the opposition accuses us of claiming that the US has no immigrants, they're also the ones who accuse us of saying that we don't know what the word immigration means, when clearly the two are at loggerheads. Members of the House, I think as social beings, once again talking about our niche, our work, and our functional role, when we work best, we talk about how well we adhere to this role. We've all asked how we transform our environment, how much more we can achieve over there. But has it occurred to you that within our own India, where we have that security is mortal's chiefest enemy, says Hecate in Macbeth. When we have that security, we are so much more divided. And when we go over there, we see a handful of Indians, we see a handful of like-minded people, and so much stronger we are together because of that unifying thread amongst lesser people. In the world of global villages, I think it is important when it comes to that. You know, Indians are excellent at putting up titles. Whether or not they achieve their best is a different thing. Be it with the title Mr. Mitra mentioned, or be it with the title we give ourselves, the word Jugaad. I think it has much to do with us working the best as immigrants simply because of this Jugaad, simply because of this adaptability, and simply because of this flexibility in every single niche, in every single situation, no matter possible. The fact remains that when the home is the shark's mouth, we would prosper much more elsewhere. We would prosper where there is scope to prosper. Ultimately, while the opposition accuses us of not knowing what the word immigration means, and then boldly they come up and say that the US has no immigrants, I think it is once again an instance of Jugaad when it comes to them trying to scramble the few threads that they have to save them from a sinking motion which they are opposing. That is the sinking part. The motion was afloat, they are sinking. That would be all. Thank you, members of the House.
Meanwhile, the recipients of the Sandip Chatterjee citation, perhaps one of you will say a few lines after Debayon, and where are you? Yeah, raise your hand, and you're here. So maybe we'll take a minute from you each to hear you after this. Get ready. Shumantra, over to you.
I'm determined not to exceed my time this time.
I'd just like to redirect the House's attention to the flaw embedded in the proposition. Indians work best as immigrants. And this is not just a generalization. It is, frankly, an absurd generalization. It is simply not sustainable. Just think of the legions of Indians who have achieved the best of their potential in so many different fields without becoming immigrants. It's undeniable that there are some Indians who have achieved great heights abroad, in other countries, away from India. But as I said earlier, that's not necessarily because they were abroad. It speaks to their individual brilliance, their individual talent, their individual motivation, and ultimately, their individual achievement. I can't agree more strongly with Professor Krishna Sen that we need to decolonize our minds. But I second her very strongly, very enthusiastically, in the sense that she meant it, and not in the sense that, say, Ram Madhav of the RSS means it, when he writes op-eds in the Indian Express. There's a difference. But it stands. Free your mind, and the rest will follow. Thank you.
Professor Shen, you live in duration, I live in time. Duration is a scalar quantity, as anybody who's a student of physics knows, and time is a vector. It is directional. You have a lot of duration of no consequence. I live in time. I use my time properly, Professor Shen, with due respect. Professor Bose had talked about false causality. We want to propose to this House today, before you go to put the motion to vote, that we are talking about positive causality. In microbiology, when you culture a bacterium or a virus, you give it a medium for culture. The world is an open playfield, but the immigrant Indians have been given a culture medium where they can flourish. Because I'm a photographer, I'll end with this. There is something in your mobile phones, in every camera, every digital instrument in the world is called the CMOS sensor. It was discovered and invented in the patent library at Bedoputr Pine, who is probably well known more as the filmmaker who created Chattogram. That gentleman was creating his best invention of the CMO sensor out there. What the proposition today is trying to say is they have a huge playing field with the play. How do they play? They first traveled as merchants and sailors, then as plantation and colonial workers, then they became traders, entrepreneurs, professionals, and then they became the workforce in the Gulf. Finally, they became technocrats, scientists. From the sweeper to Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, or Bedoputr Pine, the Indian immigrant has performed best in the world. Thank you.
I promise not to finish early. I'll bore you for 2 full minutes. And Madam Supriya Newar is, after hearing her, I can't drink my scotch. I'll have to have a bourbon instead, maybe. What can I do? And you're talking about sinking ships. I think it was this Gen Z little boy, Devdeepta, talking about sinking ships, trying to save a sinking ship. Where? All the ships are being sunk by Russia, Ukraine, US, Iran. There are no more ships to sink. They are all sunk. Nothing. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, going by my reputation, I'll finish early. And as I said, I can't hold you any longer. The evening is quite flown very nicely, and let's enjoy the rest of the evening, not debating, but enjoying ourselves. Thank you.
I think a very cruel man will keep Obro away from his scotch. So we won't do it very much longer.
Sometimes
but
thirst overtakes logic.
yeah, it does. Yeah. But as you dwell, as you summarize, as you form a synopsis of all you've heard for a few more minutes, I think it is befitting for Sandip Chatterjee Memorial Debate to have one of our youngest speakers, Devayon, 1 minute each to our recipients this evening, a minute each.
On this topic? Are you ready, Abhishekta and Nirbhay? Why don't you come forward so that we waste least time? Okay, so 1 minute, Devayon. Off you go.
Thank you, sir. I think the proposition took Dr. Chatterjee's way of thinking and played with your mind, while the opposition took Dr. Shorka's way of thinking and played with your hearts, played with your emotions, played with... You see, we as Indians, the motion is not that human beings work best as immigrants, it is that Indians work best as immigrants. Now, when I hear the word Indian immigrant, I first thought of Subhash Chandra Bose, that was taken up. Then I thought of Michael Modishodhan, that was taken up. So I have to go outside India now. It is Moses that I go to. Why did Moses leave? Why did Moses go to the promised land? Why did God part the sea? Today we are living in India that is going more and more towards something called palingenetic ultranationalism. We are trying to revive the past we never had. We are claiming to be the birthplace, somebody mentioned this, the birthplace of ideas which never were, we never were. We are living in a hostile environment, and that is why we work best as immigrants, because as immigrants, as Indian immigrants, we are focusing on the present, we are going outside India so as to not be stuck in the past.
Very good point. Point taken. I was just afraid that you will wander off to the Gaza. So thank you. We move on to the next one. Right. Well spoken.
A round of applause for Nirbhay.
Good evening. The motion placed before us today reads, Indians work best as immigrants, and I stand firmly with this motion. And today I'll just make 2 points to prove this case. So to prove this motion, let us look at how human psychology works. When we are faced with an extreme situation, there's an adrenaline rush, right? For example, if we are faced by a tiger, we get an adrenaline rush. What that does, when you're placed in any kind of unfavorable situation, we get an adrenaline rush. What that does is that it makes us work best to ensure that we protect ourselves against the tiger. When Indians move abroad, they move to a place where they don't have that safety net. They may move to a place where they don't have the safety and the comfort of their family or a country that they can call their own. And that is why what happens is that it makes their body work best to ensure that they can build a career. And the second point that I would like to make is that the primary purpose of an immigrant is to go build a career. And thereby, when Indians go as immigrants, their primary purpose in life is to build a career, not just be, involved in other activities with their families or with their friends, but primary purpose is to build a career, and thereby they work best to ensure that they can build a decent career for themselves.
Thank you, Nirbhay. Excellent points. Abhishekta, over to you.
Right. Now, the motion claims that Indians work best when they move elsewhere, but it is not the movement that creates one's excellence, it is one's opportunity that it does. And therefore, I would like to start with a quote that we are not given a choice of where we are born, but we can choose where our talent takes us. And therefore, I start with a question. Does changing the country change the caliber of a person, or what measures the change is actually the opportunities that is available to that person? We have looked at Indians all evening who have succeeded globally, from Sundar Pichai to Satya Nadella. Their achievements have demonstrated the strength of Indian talent, Indian education, and Indian resilience. But their success cannot be claimed that Indians are inherently more productive outside of their homeland. The answer is clear, that Indians do not work best there elsewhere. They work best when their talent is, number one, recognized, their opportunities are meaningful, and their potential is allowed and given room to grow and to flourish. Whether that potential is allowed to travel from Borishal to Kolkata, or from Medinipur to Delhi, or from India or to the United States, all that matters is to give that person a particular room, a particular stage, and a particular platform to grow and establish themselves. Thank you.
Well done, well done. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a thrilling debate in which, with every stroke of word, with every utterance of logic, with every example that has been thrown in front of us, we have swayed from one side to the other. And now it is your time. And as CDC will close the debate this evening, you are cordially invited if you can. I think that debate is sold out already. We have the Indian economy debate coming up on the Wednesday when CDC goes out to debate that as we go on winning elections, we have lost the economy. We seem to have lost the economy. That is at the ITC parlor, but I think that debate is already sold out with a lot of people coming in from Delhi, etc. But if you can, I think that debate will captivate us. Let's come back to here and now this evening. Those of you who have agreed with the opposition, those of you who have agreed with Moyuri, Obhrujit, Shumantro and Krishnadi, that Indians against the motion, please put your hands up. Shankar?
No, you can't both ways.
Rough idea? 62. Huh? 62. No, can't do it again. And those of you who have sided with the proposition with Kaushik and company, put your hands up. Wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, a befitting close finish for Sandip's memorial debate. But whatever it is, Sandip is with us here and now, and in this debate has been carried by the proposition. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.